So welcome to my channel, Old Ducati Girl. I'm going to talk about my return to motorcycling after a 30-year absence. The last motorcycle I had was in 1982, and that was a Harley-Davidson FXR, which was the 5-speed bike with a modern frame. And after that experience, it took me 30 years to get back to motorcycling. That's not exactly true. I can't blame that on the Harley. Life has a way of getting involved with other stuff. But in any case, the bike I kept remembering over these past 30 plus years was a 1975 Norton Commando Mark III 850 electric start motorcycle. And it was the funniest thing. Every couple of years I would, watch the Nortons and watch them, on Craigslist or whatever. And I kept thinking, I need to get another Norton. And then I'd tell myself, what the hell? What are you thinking? And so anyway, about 5 years ago, I bought a Mark III 850 Norton and started riding again. And so I had that Norton for a couple of years and did a lot of work on it and got it to be a really, really fine piece of running machinery. Somehow, I kept having an itch. And so a friend of mine said, well, why don't you buy a more modern bike like a Ducati? And so, I ended up getting a 1975 Ducati. I thought, well, now that's coming into the modern world here. And so that's one of the themes of this channel will be modernity, the postmodern, and what I think of a lot of what passes for modern engineering. And of course, you got to realize this is coming from an old person. So but really, that wasn't the reason why I bought the Ducati. I bought the Ducati because of what it sounds like. And when I bought the Norton, and this was like 1980 or 81, I bought it from TT Motors in Berkeley down on Ashby. And I paid $1,650 for it. It had about 9,000 miles on it. It ran really well. And it was black. The one I bought 5 years ago was black too. Almost identical bike. And the thing about it was, while I was buying that bike, out in the back they had a little workshop area, and they were working on a Ducati 750 Super Sport, the green frame one. And I always remembered the sound of that bike. It sounded like a little radial aircraft engine, and it just stuck with me. It was so delicate and yet purposeful at the same time. And and I started watching Ducatis about 2 years ago. I was just, studying and thinking and reading. And so, of course, I was looking at older bikes, and you can't touch a green frame bike. And I was sniffing around, and there was a 750 GT Ducati up in Seattle. A lot of money, but the problem is it was a right-hand shift bike, and I learned how to ride left-hand shifters. And at my age, having two different neurological pathways going is not a good idea. I only have a limited number of brain cells to apply to the situation. So I figured because the Norton, the Harley was all right hand shift, I better find a Ducati that was a left hand shift. Excuse me, they're all left hand shifters. And so, anyway, once I got clear that the old 860 here might just fill the bill, um, why did I buy an old one? Well, the bikes today look too tall. They're tall and they're lumpy looking. And there's all kinds of weird angles and they look like Japanese transformer robots. And so part of what I talk about on this channel is going to be aesthetics. What do I think about what stuff looks like? But in any case, once I got clear about that the fact that the 860 was a bike that was affordable and had a left-hand shift, uh, 24 hours later, I had taken this thing for a ride. And it turned out to be someone in the Norton Club had this bike, and they had bought it, or their dad had bought it, and they were working on it together. This is Dave in the Norton Club. And but his dad didn't want to ride anymore, so this thing was gathering dust in the garage, and I went and rode it, and it's a long motorcycle, and the it wasn't really running right, but it basically seemed like a pretty solid bike. So I bought it, and I really didn't know that I was going to like it, but I knew that it was a rare machine, and it was the chance to get to know this kind of motorcycle. And so I bought it, and I've been working on it for the past year and a half, and it's coming around. It's starting to, it's coming together. And Dave had done some really solid work on it. He had put in the Saxa electronic ignition and a dual front brake, and basically it was about halfway brought back to really good operating condition. And the clock was quoted at 15,000 miles. Now, with a bike that's the better part of 50 years old, you never know how many miles are on it. But I've been inside the timing chest here, and the gears, all the gears, and the gears on the other side, they look perfect. A little bit of a shine where the gears have meshed, but no pitting, no spalling, none of that crazy stuff. No, and the hardware inside, none of it looks abused. It all looks really, really clean. And there's just not enough nicks and dings on it to have been wrenched on terribly. So I tend to believe the 15,000 mile mark on it. And so I've done some work on it, and I'll go into that a little bit. But I had to do rings and barrels on it. Luckily, I found a pair of barrels on eBay that were stock size, 86 millimeters, and I've got a wonderful little machine shop here in Vancouver, and he fit the pistons to the barrels. We put new rings in it because the original rings were the one-piece rings, and he said those were pretty rough on the barrel. So anyway, we got that freshened up. And I've done some other things to it. I won't go into all the details. Anyway, it's running pretty good now, and I'm learning how to do the carburation. And the thing about this bike, it's a kickstart only, and luckily, it starts pretty easily, much easier than the Commando. I couldn't kickstart the Commando, especially after I did pistons and bores on it. It was like standing on a cinder block. But this bike starts up pretty easily. You have to know how to start it, though. Otherwise, it doesn't want to do it. So it's a very demanding little machine. And so, anyway, it's a different kind of ride. It's the wheelbase on this thing is 1,550 millimeters. And so it has a turning radius of a small cruise ship. But I've fallen in love with it. And I sold the Norton. And as it turns out, with limited amount of time and limited season here, you walk out in the garage and you're going to ride the bike that's the most fun. You're like, well, am I going to ride? I have limited amount of time. Am I going to ride the one that's kind of fun, or am I going to ride the one that's really, really fun? And you know, they can say what they want about modern machines. Of course, I shouldn't really say too much about modern machines because the most recent bike I've ever ridden was a 1982 bike. Um, my education has some gaps in it. But in any case, the marvelous thing on this Ducati is this carburetor right here by your knee. And when you crack the throttle, and I don't even mean crack it wide open, but you hear the induction slap of this carburetor, and it's just musical. And the thing is, back when I was much younger and had money, I used to take Italian sports cars. I had a bunch of old Alphas and stuff, and I'd take them apart, put them back together. And so for me, coming back to an Italian machine is a homecoming. I never did really get along that well with British cars. I built a Lotus Elan from a box of parts one time, but it was engineering's kind of dumb, and I love the Norton. I'd probably still have the Commando if this hadn't come along, but this bike is just more fun for me, and we get along really well. So from time to time, I will give the English a bad time just because it's fun. I always talk about if you're going to work on an English bike, you need a lamb's head sprundle stick. It's a thing you can poke into it at different places. It's good for putting tallow on the breaker points and stuff like that. But no, I'm an Anglophile. In any case, so we'll talk about aesthetics, we'll talk about the modern world, we will talk about motorcycling, and we will talk about the interesting people that I meet in this world. And I really have met some wonderful people. And this is the first video. So welcome, and in fact, one of the interesting people will actually come on after I get done talking. So thank you very much. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Well, I suppose she has told you all about her new motorbike. I'm the one that told her to get a more modern machine and get rid of that old British bike. And what does the imbecile do? She buys another bike built in 1975. I don't know. You can't reason with that woman. She's... She is an imbecile. Oh, well. Well, at least the bike is no longer British. My grandfather was on a train that was blown up by the British terrorist, Colonel Lawrence. And I have never forgiven them. It makes me so angry. Spill my coffee again.